even in small ways, showed Alex that she saw their marriage as a true partnership rather than a transaction. The guest list for their wedding was a perfect reflection of the life they'd built together in Pine Ridge. Emma's students and their families were invited, along with Alex's co-workers from the hardware store and the friends they'd made in their small community. Alex's family traveled from the city to attend, and while they were initially surprised by the modest scale of the celebration, they were obviously moved by the genuine affection and respect that everyone showed for the couple. Alex's mother, who had been devastated by the Lucy disaster, was particularly touched by Emma's warm, unpretentious manner and her obvious devotion to her son. During the rehearsal dinner, she pulled Alex aside to tell him that she could see why he'd fallen in love with Emma, that anyone could tell just by watching them together that this was the real thing. His father, initially concerned about Alex marrying someone from such a different background, was won over by Emma's intelligence and her genuine interest in hearing about the family business and history. The wedding ceremony itself was everything Alex had never known he wanted. Emma walked down the aisle wearing a simple white dress she'd chosen herself, looking radiant with happiness rather than performing for an audience. When they exchanged vows, they spoke directly to each other about their hopes for their future, their gratitude for finding each other, and their commitment to building a life based on honesty and mutual respect. There were no hidden cameras recording their promises, no secret agendas lurking beneath their public declarations of love. But the most meaningful moment of the entire celebration came during the reception, when an unexpected guest appeared at the community center. Lucy, Alex's former fiancée, had somehow learned about his wedding and had driven to Pine Ridge to see for herself what kind of life he'd built after their dramatic breakup. She looked nothing like the confident, calculating woman who had tried to use him for financial gain. Instead, she appeared tired, defeated, and genuinely regretful about the choices she'd made. Lucy's appearance at the reception initially caused some tension, as several of Alex's family members recognized her and were clearly uncomfortable with her presence at his new beginning. But Alex, feeling more secure and confident than he had in years, approached Lucy calmly and asked her what she wanted. Her response surprised everyone who could hear their conversation, including Alex himself. Lucy told Alex that she'd come to apologize, not just for what she'd done to him, but for the person she'd been when they were together. She explained that losing him had forced her to examine her own values and priorities, that she'd realized how shallow and destructive her approach to relationships had been. She said she'd spent the past year in therapy, trying to understand why she'd been so focused on material security that she'd been willing to destroy someone who had genuinely cared about her. What Lucy said next was perhaps the most honest thing Alex had ever heard from her. She told him that seeing him with Emma, watching how they interacted with each other and with their community, had shown her what she'd thrown away when she'd chosen to see him as a financial opportunity rather than a person worth loving. She said she could see that Emma loved him in ways she never had, that their relationship was built on the kind of foundation she'd never even tried to create with him. Lucy's apology was clearly genuine, but it was also clearly too late. Alex accepted her words graciously, thanking her for taking the time to come and express her regrets. But he also made it clear that her apology, while appreciated, didn't change anything about his current life or his feelings about their past relationship. He'd moved beyond the pain she'd caused him and had found something better than what they'd ever had together. Emma's reaction to Lucy's unexpected appearance was characteristic of her generous spirit and secure confidence in their relationship. Instead of feeling threatened or uncomfortable, she approached Lucy with kindness and actually thanked her for the role she'd unknowingly played in bringing Alex to Pine Ridge. Emma explained that if Lucy hadn't broken Alex's heart, he might never have left his old life and found his way to their small town and to her. The conversation between Emma and Lucy was brief but illuminating. Lucy seemed genuinely amazed by Emma's lack of jealousy or insecurity, clearly struggling to understand how someone could be so confident in their partner's affection. Emma's calm assurance that Alex loved her and had chosen her was so different from the calculating competition that had characterized Lucy's approach to relationships that Lucy seemed almost confused by it. As Lucy prepared to leave the reception, she pulled Alex aside one more time to tell him something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. She said that watching him with Emma had taught her what real love was supposed to look like, that she'd never understood before that day what she'd been missing in all her relationships. She told him that Emma was clearly the right person for him in ways that she never could have been, even if she'd been a better person when they were together. After Lucy left, Alex and Emma continued their reception as if nothing unusual had happened. Their guests, many of whom had no idea who Lucy was or why her appearance had been significant, simply enjoyed celebrating the obvious happiness of the newlywed couple. Alex danced with Emma to their chosen song, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about their future together, feeling more grateful and content than he'd ever imagined possible. The honeymoon Alex and Emma took was perfectly suited to who they were as a couple. Instead of some elaborate international trip to exotic locations, they spent 2 weeks exploring national parks and small towns throughout their region. They hiked, read books together in cozy bed and breakfasts, and talked about their plans for their future in Pine Ridge. Emma had never expressed any desire to leave their small town for the luxury and excitement of city life, and Alex had discovered that he was perfectly happy building a simple life with someone he truly loved. When they returned from their honeymoon, Alex and Emma settled into married life with the same easy compatibility they'd shown throughout their relationship. Alex continued working at the hardware store, though he also began using his business background to help other local businesses improve their operations and profitability. Emma continued teaching, but she also started a literacy program for adults in their community, using some of Alex's resources to provide books and materials for people who wanted to improve their reading skills. Their life together was exactly what Alex had been searching for without realizing it: authentic partnership with someone who valued him for his character rather than his assets, genuine contentment that didn't depend on external validation or material accumulation, and the kind of deep happiness that comes from being fully known and completely accepted by another person. Looking back on his journey from his disastrous first engagement to his perfect marriage with Emma, Alex realized that every painful experience with Lucy and Caroline had been necessary to help him recognize genuine love when he finally found it. The betrayals and rejections that had seemed so devastating at the time had actually been gifts, clearing away his illusions and teaching him to value substance over surface appeal. Alex's story became a quiet legend in Pine Ridge, though most people didn't know the dramatic details of his past or the wealth he'd chosen to live without. They simply saw a man who'd found his perfect match and had built a life based on love rather than convenience or advantage. His example inspired other people in their community to look more carefully at their own relationships, to consider whether they were choosing partners for the right reasons. Years later, when Alex and Emma had children of their own, they would teach them the lessons Alex had learned the hard way: that genuine love is rare and precious, that material wealth means nothing without authentic connection, and that the best relationships are built on mutual respect, shared values, and the kind of deep affection that remains constant regardless of external circumstances. The story of Alex and Emma proves that sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best discoveries, that heartbreak can be the beginning of real happiness, and that true love is worth waiting for, no matter how long the journey takes to find it. Subscribe for more stories about love, betrayal, and finding your way back to happiness.